So Representative Beth Fukumoto, you represent Mililani and the Mililani Malka, Waipio Acres. You're running for Congress for the 1st Congressional District in Hawaii. Tell me why.
I'm running for Congress. You know, I think we need a fresh voice in politics. We need a fresh voice in Congress, but one that's experienced. And for me, I feel like in this last year, I've really shown that I have the courage to stand up to special interests, and that's what we need in DC. The courage, but then also the ability to navigate the political morass that we're all watching happen in Washington, DC. I think it's going to take somebody that is willing to stand up for Hawaii's values, stand up against special interests, stand up against the establishment, but also know how to navigate the political system.
Describe the morass that you're talking about. Is Washington not working from your point of view?
I think Washington's not working from anybody's point of view, but I think specifically for me, it's watching this sort of partisan divide that's gotten so intense that nobody can even eat together. Nobody can have a drink together. It's just unbelievable, and it's something that is not serving the American people.
Tell me 2 or 3 things that would be important to you if you get to Congress. Priorities for Hawaii. What's at the top of your list?
The top of my list is infrastructure. We desperately need more federal funding. We actually get less federal funding than many, many other states. And we especially need things for building new roads. I'm from Central Oahu. I grew up in Mililani. I know what it's like to be stuck in traffic for 45 minutes to get anywhere. And 45 minutes is maybe even a good day. Sometimes it's a couple of hours. Sometimes it tells us to go around the island to try to get to Mililani from downtown because it's faster to go that way. And that just speaks to how badly we need infrastructure. We really need to start making those improvements, and those are federal funds. So I think that's one of the big things. I think I'd really like to get involved in the tax debate. I think there's been a lot of conversation about tax deductions or what we should do about federal tax reform. And I think that my background in the Finance Committee, my background on specifically taxation issues could be really helpful in that debate. And I'd love to join the Democratic caucus in trying to fight back against some of these tax reforms.
One of the areas where we do get a lot of federal funding is the military, the Defense Department. And as you know, Oahu, home to PACOM, Pearl Harbor, Hickam, and so forth. That's been something that the delegation pretty much throughout, regardless of the party, has fought for. What are your connections and experience understanding the U.S. military presence in Hawaii?
Well, you know, I represent a district that is heavily populated by people who are in the military or retired military. And I've been a constant supporter of making sure that we have a military presence here in Hawaii because it brings us jobs. And I recognize that. I recognize that it's a lot of local people working in those jobs and working for defense. And that's my understanding. That's my personal understanding of the military in Hawaii. But I think I also have been able to build over the years different relationships with Boeing, with some of these other groups that I think others maybe didn't have that opportunity to build. And so my better understanding of defense comes from my experience working with those lobbyists, knowing what they're looking for, knowing when to push back against them, but also knowing how to work with them to help Hawaii.
Is Schofield Barracks in your district?
Schofield Barracks and Wheeler are right outside my district, so we end up having a lot of people who live in Mililani and work there.
Okay, so you were elected, I believe, for the first time 2012?
2012, yeah.
So what would you point to as a significant accomplishment, 1 or 2 things that you feel proud of? I know that you were in the minority party for much of your time, and of course the state is heavily dominated by Democrats, but are there things that you could point to legislatively to say, look, I had a hand in getting that done?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest thing, one of the proudest accomplishments is I was able to change our insurance laws to require insurance testing for STD and HIV. One of the things that we were finding out is, especially for women when they went for monthly exams, would have to pay out of pocket. They would have to pay cash out of pocket to get tested, which is completely insane. People were putting down $100 just so that they could get tested. And so one of the things we were able to change was change our insurance law to say that if you're going to offer insurance plans in Hawaii, they have to cover STD and HIV testing.
Okay. I want to ask you, you have to be expecting this. These are the devil advocates question, but as everybody knows, you were a Republican for much of your time in the legislature. In fact, you were the minority leader for a good chunk of that time. You haven't even been a Democrat for more than a year now, and now you're running the Democratic primary for the 1st Congressional District. And you're running against some pretty experienced people, well-known figures like Donna Kim, Ernie Martin, Doug Chin, and Kaniela Ng. You know they're going to say, you're not a real Democrat. How are you going to respond to that?
Right. I think, I think there are a couple of ways to respond. I think including Doug Chin in that list of people that is a real Democrat and a proven Democrat would be incorrect. First of all, he's newer than I am. He's never been elected, and he's never served with the Democratic caucus, which I am now. But I think the bigger thing that I would say is my process of becoming a Democrat was greater than anybody else's process.
What do you mean by that?
So when I announced last year that I wanted to switch parties, the initial thing that everybody said, and rightly so, was that just because you're not a Republican doesn't mean you're a Democrat. Fair. You need to understand the values of the party. This is a party with a long, great history in the state of Hawaii, and they should be protective over who holds their values and who uses their name. That said, I don't think that we as a party, and we meaning the Democratic Party, I don't think that we as a party have done a good job of protecting those values and democratic values and making sure people that hold the name Democrat actually live up to them. And so what I had to do when I joined, what the party said to me was, you're going to have to prove yourself. And our process in Hawaii
Did they tell you that directly?
Sure, yeah. Many Democrats said that. And our process in Hawaii is that you have to, if you're a sitting elected official wanting to switch parties, you need to go through the Oahu County Committee, which is made up of activists from all around Oahu, all within CD1 and part of CD2, the different district chairs, everyone. They had to come in. They were going to have to vote on me. The Oahu County Committee was going to have to come in and vote, and they were going to have to decide whether or not they thought I fit their values. And the rule is, if you get rejected by that committee, you can never run as a Democrat ever again. And what?
I mean, like, ever?
Yeah, ever. Like, they can challenge you on the ballot. You cannot run on the Democratic ticket.
You couldn't come
again.
Back 2 years, 4 years later.
I could not. I mean, I could try to reapply for membership, but I would have to go through that same process and get approved again.
So how did you score?
So and so let me tell you about this, or what went on, right? Nobody going into it, it was this huge risk, and a lot of people said, Beth, you might not make it. This is a party that's really, really sensitive right now, and a committee that's sensitive right now about not having any more Democrats that don't hold our values. We want to make sure that we're upholding democratic values. And so I said, all right, I'm going to chance it because I know I have those values, and I just have to be able to show them that I have them. So I went and I talked to every single voter on that committee. We had meetings, we had coffee, we had drinks. I wanted them to get to know me and get to know my values. I came in for a couple of interviews. The first one went a couple hours long, and it got recorded. It got spread over Facebook so other people could listen. And I think what was so great about that process, I'm saying this like I'm going to say it's like an onerous process, but what was so great about that process was that I got to know the individual members of the party and their individual concerns and the policies they're worried about and their frustrations with current elected officials better than any elected official ever has to. And it went from being a conversation about what happens if I get rejected to being a unanimous vote. I talked to the LGBT caucus. They ended up coming out and endorsing me. I talked to the Labor caucus. They ended up coming out and endorsing me. And I think it really helped solidify Beth is a Democrat. Beth does have the democratic values that we uphold in a way that Donna Kim has not had to go through, in a way that Kaniela Ng has not had to go through, in a way that Doug Chin has not had to go through. I had to prove myself that I knew the platform inside and out in a way that most Democrats don't. And so I think that's always going to be my counter. Yeah.
I'm going to give you a little short quiz here.
Yes.
About the platform, about values.
Fun stuff.
Okay. Healthcare, where do you stand?
I think we should start talking about a single payer system. I think the way that we've talked about, the way that we've sort of tried to piecemeal changes to healthcare has just not worked. I think we end up in this, I'm going to use the word morass again, but there's a better word.
But you would vote to keep Obamacare in place, because as you know, if you get into Congress and Republicans retain control, they're going to try again.
I don't think we should repeal what we have. No, absolutely not. But I think we need to be a little bit more progressive about what we have also.
Okay. You mentioned LGBT rights. Where do you stand on that?
I think the number one thing that I'm concerned about right now is disallowing conversion therapy. I think we definitely need a ban. I think the ban is long overdue. It frustrates me. It has frustrated me that it keeps dying in a Democratic-controlled legislature.
There's actually a bill this session on conversion therapy, isn't there?
There is. There's a bill this session. There was a bill last session, and I cannot for the life of me understand. This goes back to, are the Democrats right now actually upholding democratic values? Because this should have been a no-brainer, and we still have not passed a ban on conversion therapy.
This would prevent, it's the theory that you can be talked out of your sexual identity, orientation, and that of course you cannot, that it's immutable.
Right, right, which is psychologically detrimental to people, but especially young kids.
Okay. Abortion, pro-choice, pro-life?
Pro-choice.
Okay. Labor unions, support them, oppose them, work with them, fight them?
Definitely not oppose or fight. My grandfather, and this is going to be it can be a brief story, but my mom, my grandfather in New York City was a union leader. Before the AFL-CIO got formed, his union was a part of helping to form it. He fought on the front lines for rights for workers, and my mom's first job was in a union hall. So I come from a long history of labor. My father was in the Postal Workers Union. He was a postal worker his whole life. I am a working class family with a strong labor background. So even as a Republican, I was always pro-labor, which got me in trouble. But I think, workers need voices, and unions provide that voice. And I think especially with the Janus case coming up, we now more than ever need to be supportive of our labor unions.
That's the Supreme Court case that's going to be probably decided in June regarding membership and fees and so forth.
Right, and as the minority leader, as the Republican leader, labor had come to me and said, "Can you support us with a brief?" When it was the Friedrichs case, the same argument: should workers be required to pay union dues is the question on the table. And when it was called the Friedrichs case, unions came to me, local unions came to me and said, would you write us a brief to support our position, to support making sure that unions include everyone? And I had agreed to do that.
Okay, more Dem litmus test questions. Minimum wage.
Yeah, minimum wage, I think we need to increase the national minimum wage. I've been supportive of the minimum wage increases here in Hawaii. I think we need to be careful about making sure it's incremental. I think if you jump all the way to a completely living wage, if you jump all the way to $20 minimum wage, that does cause a lot of problems for businesses. But what we found is if you can work on incremental change, that can get us there to where we all want to be, which is a higher minimum wage. But the federal minimum wage desperately needs to change.
Okay, and at the state level, there was legislation to push it up to $15 or more, and I believe that has died so far.
It has died. I am supportive, though, because I think we do need to get it that high.
Three more. Entitlements. I'm just guessing, but if you're a Democrat, where do you stand on Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid?
Yeah. All of it. I mean, I think we need to protect what we've promised. We've promised people these things, and we're underfunding it. It's causing us problems that we are underfunding, and this constant back and forth about whether or not we should repeal things we've already offered is not helping anybody. So I'm supportive of keeping everything in place.
Climate change, is it real?
Yes, climate change is definitely real. I have never, and again, this goes back to getting in trouble as a Republican. I never said that I had concerns about climate change being real. It seems like the science is completely there. It seems terribly obvious. I'm not sure why there's even a question.
Okay, last one on my little test here. Guns. Second Amendment, gun control, gun protection, gun laws.
Yeah. I have never taken any NRA money. I think that's really important to point out, even as a Republican. And there is a lot of, or filled out NRA surveys, there's a lot of pressure for Republicans to consort with the NRA as much as possible. I never gave into that. I think that, the NRA as a lobby is way too powerful and is lying to the American people about what they really are doing and what they're not doing to keep our kids safe in schools. And so for me, some of the gun laws, Hawaii has some of the best gun laws in the country. And I think why I would like to bring to Washington is that understanding, the understanding of our gun laws here, making sure that other states know there is a way to do this, and it does keep people safer. And maybe Hawaii can be a leader in gun reform if we really are able to take our voice to Washington in that way. One of the things that I like to see pass is a gun violence restraining order. I think making sure that a family member can call the police and say, listen, my brother or sister or son is in crisis and he has access to, I know he has a weapon in his house that's legal, but I need you to go and make sure that he's safe, that he doesn't have control of that weapon for a little while. And I think that's a no-brainer, especially considering what we've seen recently with gun violence across the country. I think we should pass it in Hawaii, but it's something that we should be passing everywhere.
What about an assault rifle ban at the federal level? We actually had one in place until it expired. There's talk again, although with the current environment, probably not. But where do you stand on a ban on assault rifles? And related to that, raising the age level in which someone can own a gun from 18 to 21. I'm talking federally, not at the state level.
Yes, a ban on assault rifles. I think a ban on modifications.
Bump stocks.
Yes, bump stocks, triggers, the different types of, all the different modifications that can happen. Because bump stocks are the one we know, the one that's the most popular that we know about right now, but there are other things. So just banning modifications. And the last thing was age. I think 21 is a good age. 18 is too young to be owning a firearm.
Okay. My last set of questions has to do with, well, frankly, the most dominant figure in American politics today, the president. You famously left your party because of the president, your views on his views about minorities and women. It's now been over a year since the Women's March. You participated in that locally. Is that going to hurt your campaign or help you? As you know, about a third of our voters actually did vote for President Trump in 2016 over Hillary Clinton. Are you worried about some sort of backlash because of your strong vocal opposition to the president?
Yeah, I'm not terribly worried about a backlash. There are a lot of people in Hawaii that voted in the Republican primary or voted for Donald Trump that I don't think support all of his views, and I think can at least understand why I didn't. They voted for him for a variety of reasons, but I don't think that even that third is strongly Donald Trump and agrees with everything he says. So I don't think there will be a backlash from there. Again, I'm also running in a Democratic primary, so I think that makes a difference.
One in which Republicans can actually cross over and vote, as you know.
Which is true, and could vote against me, I guess, if they're that angry. But I think. And you asked me about Donald Trump, right? You want my opinion on Donald Trump?
How's he doing?
Yeah, how's he doing? Well, I was disturbed to see that his approval ratings went up a little bit.
They have recently.
Which is terrifying. I did speak out against Donald Trump. I started speaking out against him when he said that Japanese American internment might not be a bad idea. And that was in December of 2015. So it's been a while that I've been a Trump critic. But I didn't just leave the Republican Party because of Trump. I think that was the final straw. And what bothered me the most was this refusal to combat what he was saying, that the Republican Party was unwilling to say, this man should not be our candidate. This man should not be our nominee. This man does not represent our values. And they didn't say that because he did, and I had to come to grips with the fact that he did represent Republican values. I didn't. It was me that didn't fit, and I had to leave.
Okay. My last question for you is, can you remember a moment when you knew that politics is Was it your future? I don't know, maybe you're watching TV, you saw somebody speaking somewhere. Do you remember what it was that turned you to be a politician?
Oh, what turned me to be a politician? Gosh, I would still say I'm not a politician, but I'm running for Congress, so I guess I am.
You are.
Right, yeah.
Trust me on this one.
No, I guess I am. Gosh, when would have been the first time? I think, actually I do. I was filing papers in the Minority Research Office, and out of school in 2008, I had graduated with my master's degree, couldn't find a job in Hawaii. I had come back here because it was the recession. I was living at home.
Must have been in your early 20s at the time.
Yeah, I was, yes. And at 25, I think, 24, 25. And I was listening to all these debates going on around me. I'm literally filing papers in folders, listening to all these people talk about issues, and it really was always just the establishment versus these 6 Republicans that had very little voice. And for me, as a young person just getting out of college, I just looked around and said, who's talking for me? Who's talking for my family? And I think that's when I knew, is when I looked around and saw nobody else was saying anything. Maybe it's time for me to jump in and say something that I care about. And the same thing is true with Congress. I looked around and I'm jumping into the race a little bit late. But it's because I spent months looking around saying, who's speaking for me? Who's speaking for my family? Who's speaking for the people of Mililani, the people of Oahu? I'm not sure. I don't think I don't think the message that I'm hearing is the right message for who we want to send to Washington. And then I had to take a minute and say, okay, well, maybe that means it's me. Maybe it means I'm supposed to do this. And it was that same moment I had, in my early 20s, deciding to run for State House.